Hello, everyone. Welcome tonight. It is Sunday night, December 4th, 2022, and welcome to our devotional. The most important thing you will have already heard tonight was the First Presidency Christmas devotional just a little while ago. And so if you haven't already heard too much, why, thank you for being here tonight, and I welcome you here. I am very self-conscious tonight. That I keep it positive and that it's edifying and that you enjoy your experience tonight. Last week was a very humbling experience for me. I've been on Facebook and Instagram all week long trying to step it up a little bit and let you know how much I care, and I hope you've seen some of those messages. By the way, tonight, we haven't done this in a while, but tonight, it would be appreciated if you send me a little note in the comments how many of you are watching and where you're watching from. That would be much appreciated. Now, just a couple of things. This always makes me uncomfortable, but I feel like it's important and necessary. You see these? These are two books that Dennis and I finished this last year with History of the Saints, Tempering Steel, the novel, and Testimonies of Joseph Smith. Now, both of these would make fantastic Christmas gifts, but the thought that came to me tonight is that these are my gifts to you. You need to know that as an author in the LDS market, you don't get rich. You don't make any money virtually at all. When you undertake a work like this, it doesn't really pay for itself, not in terms of wages. You might pay for the printing, but these are my gift to you. I wish I could give one to everyone, but I can't. You have to buy it. But they're available at historyofthesaints.org. This is a novel, Tempering Steel, a great edifying read, especially for young adults and those in their 30s. I think they would really enjoy this. And for those who want to know the prophet Joseph Smith better, this is a fantastic Christmas gift. So just a thought for you. I'm a lousy salesman, but I'm passionate about the work we've done. So I hope you can see through that. The next thing, Dennis and I will be in Logan at the Deseret Book on December 21st through the 23rd, signing books, greeting friends, giving lots of hugs, and hope that you're there. So again, that's Logan, Deseret Book, December 21st through the 23rd. And as always, we have a little reprieve now. We're not traveling. We get to stay home for Christmas. But next year's travel schedule for me, if you would like to come with me, and I'd love to have you, will be at glenrawsonstories.com. You can find my travel schedule there, or you can find most of it at funforlesstours.com. I know that there is a church history trip coming up in May that has a few seats left. That's funforlesstours.com. So I'd love to have you. Now, one more thing before I begin tonight. Please have a prayer in your heart and help me and help all of you by your faith and prayers. This first story, I mentioned it earlier in the week on Facebook. I want to have a little fun with this. The following incident occurred on the 23rd of December, 1845. The Nauvoo Temple was sealed in, outside was done, and ordnance work was begun in the attic story of the temple. Now, you have to understand that December 1845 and this temple were deeply troubling to the enemies of the church in Hancock County, Illinois, who had believed that the death of Joseph and Hiram Smith would be the death of the church. But instead, the blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church. The work moved faster. The temple rose majestically on the bluff above the Mississippi River, and the enemies of the church were alarmed. If these Mormons are not going to leave, we'll drive them out. So again, they began to pillage and persecute the saints. And as you would expect, their first and foremost target, both within the law and outside the law, was President Brigham Young. Joseph's gone. It's Brigham now. President Young shared the following story. Quote, "I was in my room in the temple. It was in the southeast corner of the upper story. I learned that a posse was lurking around the temple and that the United States Marshal was waiting for me to come down. Whereupon I knelt down and asked my Father in heaven in the name of Jesus to guide and protect me that I might live to prove advantageous to the saints. Just as I arose from my knees and sat down in my chair, there came a rap at my door. I said, 'Come in.' And Brother George D. Grant, who was then engaged driving my carriage and doing chores for me, entered the room. Said he, 'Brother Young, do you know that a posse and the United States Marshal are here?' I told him I had heard so. On entering the room, Brother Grant left the door open. Nothing came into my mind what to do until looking directly across the hall, I saw Brother William Miller leaning against the wall. As I stepped towards the door, I beckoned to him, and he came. Said I to him, 'Brother William, the marshal is here for me. Will you go and do just as I tell you? If you will, I'll serve them a trick.' I knew that Brother Miller was an excellent man, perfectly reliable, and capable of carrying out my project. Said I, 'Here, take my cloak.' But it happened to be Brother Heber C. Kimball's. Our cloaks were alike in color, fashion, and size. I threw it around his shoulders and told him to wear my hat and accompany Brother George D. Grant. He did. I said to Brother Grant, 'George, you step into the carriage and look towards Brother Miller and say to him as though you were addressing me, "Are you ready to ride?" You can do this, and they will suppose Brother Miller to be me and proceed accordingly,' which they did. Just as Brother Miller was entering the carriage, the marshal stepped up to him, placing his hand upon his shoulder and said, 'You are my prisoner.' Brother William entered the carriage and said to the marshal, 'I'm going to the mansion house. Won't you ride with me?' They both went to the mansion house. There were my sons, Joseph A., Brigham Jr., and Brother Heber C. Kimball's boys, and others who were looking on, and all seemed at once to understand and partake of the joke. They followed the carriage to the mansion house, gathered around Brother Miller with tears in their eyes, saying, 'Father,' or President Young, 'where are you going?' Brother Miller looked at them kindly, but made no reply. And the marshal really thought he had got Brother Brigham. Lawyer Edmonds, who was then staying at the mansion house, appreciating the joke, volunteered to accompany Brother Miller to Carthage and see him safe through. When they reached Carthage, now this is still quoting Brother Brigham, when they reached Carthage, the marshal took the supposed Brigham into an upper room of the hotel and placed a guard over him, at the same time telling those around that he had got him. Brother Miller remained in the room until they bid him come to supper. While there, parties came in one after the other and asked for Brigham Young. Miller was pointed out to them. So it continued until an apostate Mormon by the name of Thatcher, who had lived in Nauvoo, came in, sat down, and asked the landlord where Brigham Young was. The landlord, pointing across the table to Brother Miller, said, 'That is Mr. Young.' Thatcher replied, 'Where? I can't see anyone that looks like Brigham.' The landlord told him it was the fat, fleshy man eating. 'Oh, hell,' exclaimed Thatcher, 'that's not Brigham. That's William Miller, one of my old neighbors.' Upon hearing this, the landlord went and, tapping the sheriff on the shoulder, took him a few steps to one side and said, 'You have made a mistake. That is not Brigham Young. It is William Miller of Nauvoo.' The marshal, very much astonished, exclaimed, 'Good heavens! And he passed for Brigham?' He then took Brother Miller into a room and, turning to him, said, 'What in hell is the reason you did not tell me your name?' I'm still quoting, by the way. Brother Miller replied, 'You have not asked me my name.' 'Well,' said the sheriff with another oath, 'what is your name?' My name, he replied, is William Miller. Said the marshal, I thought your name was Brigham Young. Do you say this for a fact? Certainly I do, said Brother Miller. Then said the marshal, why did you not tell me this before? I was under no obligations to tell you, replied Brother Miller, as you did not ask me. Then the marshal, in a rage, walked out of the room, followed by Brother Miller, who walked off in company with Lawyer Edmonds. Sheriff Backenstoss and others who took him across lots to a place of safety. And this is the real pith of the story of Bogus Brigham, as far as I can recollect. End of quote, said Brigham Young. Now, I love that story. I've heard it for decades, but I've never shared it with you. I give you this story both to lighten the mood, but also to make a timely and tender point, a warning. All those who in deed or word fight or make light of God's holy prophets, his authorized servants, will soon discover to their eternal dismay that the joke is on them, and it isn't funny. Okay, again, a couple of stories of church history, and then I want to launch into Christmas. Again, this story is a little on the lighter side. On October 9th, 1843, Joseph Murdoch passed away in Nauvoo. He had joined the church just a year before or so, after receiving miraculous healings, one of which came at the word of the prophet Joseph Smith. Just before he passed away, Joseph made his wife, now this is Joseph Murdoch, made his wife promise to take their only young son still at home, Nymphas, on to the Salt Lake Valley with President Young and the 12. Well, according to the family records, after her husband's death, Sally, Joseph's wife, was very lonely and realized she couldn't sell her property in Nauvoo if they were driven out. She also received many letters from her people back in New York pleading with her to return to them with their son. They also made tempting offers of money and land if she would come and live with them, and reminded her that she would also be free from persecution. Well, they finally persuaded Sally, the widow now, to return to her old home. And so she started down the Mississippi on a boat. It is reported that when she was only 1 day's travel down the Mississippi, she heard her husband's voice or visit say to her, Sally, where are you going? You gave me your promise that you would see our son Nymphas raised in the church and go with its body to Zion. End of quote. Can you imagine? Well, Sally returned to Nauvoo and to the church the next morning, and she never left again. She took her family and went west, settling in Salt Lake City. It was many years later written of her. On September 25th, 1864, Sally Stacy Murdoch died at the adobe brick home she and Nymphas had built at 3rd South and Main Street in Salt Lake City. She was 86 years of age. She had suffered through trials at Nauvoo, hard times at winter quarters. She was always the first to help the less fortunate and was beloved by all. She was a stalwart in the church and raised her sons to become pioneers, colonizers, and church leaders they became noted for. End of quote. You know what? It's on my mind because I see it almost every day. Today, there are too many getting on the boat, as it were, and sailing away from the church in the opposite direction. I wonder sometimes if those who are either wandering away or who are rebelling like the prodigal, I wonder if they could, what would the pioneer fathers and mothers have to say about such a choice regarding that church for which those pioneers gave so much. Where are you going? Get back there. I think that's what they'd say. All right. Now let me begin some stories of Christmas. It's Christmas time, of course, you know this, and it's that time of year when our minds are focused so much on the gifts we need to buy for the ones we love. I've had several conversations with members of my family, and oddly enough, this is the first year in 64 when I can't think of a single thing I want them to buy for me. It's frustrating my family to no end. Well, in light of that, may I share something that happened some years back? I came home from work after a busy day at the seminary. I went upstairs, dropped my stuff, and then noticed that on my pillow there was a note, and that it was that kind of paper, that unique kind of paper, that told me it came from my youngest daughter at that time. I opened it up, and sure enough, it was a note from Shana. It said, "Dear Daddy, I miss you. I'm having fun here at school. Can I go to Santa's secret shop? You're gone too much. You are the best daddy in the whole world. Love, Shana." You talk about a payday. You've had those kind of notes, I hope. I loved it. I called Shana to me, got down on her level, and thanked her for the wonderful note. When I told her I loved her too, she threw her arms around my neck and just hugged me tight. It was a wonderful, tender, and memorable moment. Now, a few days after that, I was with a group of teenagers in the seminary. I don't know why, but we were just chatting casually, when out of genuine curiosity, I asked them, if you could have anything for Christmas and money was not a consideration, what would it be? Well, I have to confess here how shallow I am. I expected these teenagers to start rambling off all these expensive toys that they would like to have. And to be honest, a few of them did mention some toys they'd really like to have. But many, if not most of them, wanted such things as their families home for the holidays. They wanted to spend time with their families, share experiences with their loved ones. I was surprised by that. I was impressed by that. One young woman's answer stood out in particular. She was a quiet, pretty young woman, young girl named Tessa, married now with a family of her own. In response to the question, Tessa said, "Well, I'd want some money for Christmas, and then I'd want a letter from my dad." Well, the money answer I expected, but the letter from Dad? I was taken back by that. I asked her why she would want that, and I figured of all things that a teenager would want least from her parents, a sentimental letter would be that last thing. Well, Tessa went on to explain that her father, at least once a year, writes her a letter in which he opens his heart and tells her that he loves her. The letters have become a cherished tradition for her. In them, Dad bears his testimony, shares the experiences of his own life, and gives her guidance and tells her what he expects from her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You mean to tell me of all the things you could have, you would most want that letter from your dad? Yes, she said, and she meant it. You know something? Maybe our loved ones really don't want the gifts that come out of stores this year as much as they want the gifts that come out of your heart, the gifts of memories, experiences. Merry Christmas And may the Lord bless you in your gift giving this year. Let's take a break. Are you doing okay? I hope that the Spirit of the Lord is with you. I hope you're happy. I hope you feel good. Christmas is not a good time to be sick and in pain, but the Lord will bless you. Now, from the Glenn Rawson Stories side of things, 2 more books that I'm extremely grateful for, and grateful to the team at Glenn Rawson Stories for putting these together. Again, like I said, don't make much money on these books, but I give these to you as Christmas gifts. Seek and Expect Miracles, the stories of angels, visions, and miracles among us. I'm presently still just finishing up the audio book for this. This is a powerful book. I can say that because the stories are not mine. They come from your pioneer fathers and mothers and a few modern ones. The stories in here will melt your heart and edify you and let you know that there's hope, that there are still miracles among us today. If someone you know needs comfort, to be edified, and their faith affirmed, this is it. God is still with us. It's available at glennrawsonstories.com. And this book, there's a whole bunch of new stories in here written by Gene Tonioli, and all of their good stories. If you want to invite the spirit of Christmas into your home, this is one of the ways you can do it. Sit down each night and read one of these with your family. And I promise you, you will learn something about Christmas music, Christmas stories, Christmas scripture. You will be edified and the Spirit will come with you. This too is available at glennrawsonstories.com. Now, I just thought I would let you know that some of you remember us. We've done this on a couple of different occasions. Jason Tonioli and I get together and do our own, version of music and the spoken word, I guess. We're going to do a Christmas music and stories fireside on December 18th. Jason, the master pianist and composer, will play, and that's the main part of this, and I will share a few stories wrapped in between. That will be Sunday night, December 18th at 8 o'clock, and we'll be coming to you from the brand new studio that Jason has built. So it will prove to be a fun and interesting, edifying experience. And the last thing tonight, the Hymn Stories book is still available, and I'm working on the 2nd volume of that. Gene and I both are. Now, speaking of Christmas music, this Christmas, when you sing that beloved hymn, "O Come, All Ye Faithful," can you hear it in your mind? Please notice that by the time you have completed singing all 3 verses that is in our book, you will have sung the word "come" 13 times. You are invited as one of the faithful to come to the Savior and rejoice. 13 times you are invited in that hymn. Now, no one knows absolutely for certain, but it is generally agreed that John Francis Wade composed the lyrics and the tune to this beautiful hymn probably somewhere around the year 1743. He published it for the first time in 1751, and the hymn immediately, published out of France, caught on in England and became very popular, a worldwide favorite. All right, very good. But you should know this. John Francis Wade was born in 1711 and grew to maturity as a faithful Catholic in England. That should start to connect. Then in 1744, when the Jacobite rebellion in England was crushed, Catholics became the target of intense persecution by the Protestants now in political power. John Francis Wade, along with many others, was forced out of his home country and fled to Douai, France, where he lived out his days as a penman, a copyist, and an illuminator of sacred music and chants. John Francis Wade passed away 16 August 1786 in France, still in exile for his faith. Think about that. It is worthy of note that the man who invited all the faithful to come to Bethlehem was told by his own to go because of his faith. We don't want you. Ironic. That is not now or then the Lord's way. Go, we don't want you. No. The invitation is still there. And though less and less people, it seems, are responding to the Lord's welcoming message, his arms of mercy are still wide open to all. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. End of quote. This next story is titled A Gift to America, and I'm indebted to my friend, Jean Tonioli, for the research and writing. She shares this. One of the most unique Christmas gifts to the United States happened during the holiday season of 1896. Let me tell you about a talented young man who was responsible for that gift. John was born November 6th, 1854 in Washington, D.C., the immigrant son of a Portuguese father and a German mother. He grew up there during the Civil War and as a child enjoyed hearing the military bands that filled the streets of the city. His father played the trombone and was a member of the United States Marine Band. In addition to attending grammar school, John was enrolled in a private conservatory of music where he studied piano and most of the orchestral instruments, although his first love was the violin. By the age of 13, he was very proficient playing violin and was determined to join a circus band. His father learned of John's plan and put an end to it, instead enlisting him as an apprentice musician with the Marine Band, where he remained until he was 20 years old. For the next 6 years, John worked as a musician, composer, and proofreader, as well as playing in the orchestra with multiple traveling theater companies. While he was on tour, John received a telegram which would shape the rest of his life. He was offered the position as leader of the Marine Band in Washington. He accepted and reported for duty October 1st, 1880, becoming the band's 17th leader. This was John's first experience conducting a military band. He updated and made changes to the music, wrote original compositions for the group, and initiated exceptionally strict and demanding rehearsals. John had perfect pitch and the talent of reading a musical score and hearing exactly how it sounded in his head. He called it his brain band. As the Marine Band director, it became the premier military band in the nation, attracting enthusiastic audiences and even touring the country each year beginning in 1891. The group flourished for 12 years with John at the helm and continues to this day as an elite band, the president's own, as it were. In fact, John wrote Semper Fidelis, the official march of the Marine Corps, dedicating it to the officers and men of that branch of the military. This successful band director, you've already guessed it, was none other than John Philip Sousa. The American bandmaster became known as the March King because of his many original, stirring band compositions. Then in 1892, he resigned his post as director, starting his own Sousa Band. He toured the United States and Europe from 1892, performing in 15,523 concerts over the ensuing decades and exposing audiences to the latest cutting-edge music, ragtime, and of course, his incomparable marches. In December 1896, John Philip Sousa and his wife took a well-deserved vacation in Europe. While there, he received word that the manager of his Sousa band, David Blakely, had died. Well, John immediately booked passage back to the United States on the ship Teutonic. As the vessel steamed out of the harbor, John began to hear a rhythmic beat of a band playing in his brain. Throughout the whole voyage, the imaginary band played the distinct melody over and over again. John said that day after day as he walked, it kept crashing into his very soul. The ship docked, and on Christmas Day, 1896, he wrote down the song that his brain band had played for days without changing even one note. First draft stood. What was this Christmas gift of glorious band music? John called it the Stars and Stripes Forever. The march was an immediate success, and Sousa's band played it from then on at the end of almost every concert, with piccolos, trumpets, and trombones front and center on the stage. Stars and Stripes Forever is considered to this day one of the finest and most patriotic marches ever written. Audiences spontaneously rise to their feet, and the song often draws tears to their eyes. The words of the chorus have captured the hearts and spirit of what it means to be an American. Hurrah for the flag of the free! May it wave as our standard forever, the gem of the land and the sea, the banner of the right. Let despots remember the day when our fathers with mighty endeavor proclaimed as they marched to the fray that by their might and by their right it waves forever. On December 11th, 1987, the Stars and Stripes Forever was designated as the National March of the United States. John Philip Sousa's Christmas gift to America, more than 100 years ago, continues to be an integral part of the celebration of American life. Thank you, Mr. Sousa. And to all of you, American patriots, Merry Christmas. Last story for tonight. And again, it's with this story that I especially pray for the Spirit of the Lord to connect with you and with me as I share this story. On the night Jesus was born, the angel of the Lord announced his coming and told the shepherds how to find him. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." I can just imagine on that holy night an innumerable chorus of angels standing by, so filled with joy and anticipation that they burst forth in songs of praise and adoration. Heaven sang while earth slept. Clearly, the angels understood something that night that we did not then, and perhaps do not now. Something so vital, so important, so magnificent that they burst forth into song spontaneously. What could it be? The angels not only knew what Jesus would be, they also knew what he had been. Jesus, or Jehovah, as he was known in the Old Testament before he was born, was in the beginning, the very beginning with the Father. He was the firstborn of all our Father's spirit children and was his beloved and chosen from the very beginning. So faithful and valiant was Jesus that even before he was born, he was like unto God in virtue, character, and power. He was so much like the Father that he was called the Father. Not just this world, but worlds without number, Jesus created before he was born. He was God, the Lord omnipotent, creator of heaven and earth and all things in them are, the God of the Old Testament. It was he, under the direction of the Father, who guided Enoch to build Zion. It was he who gave the law to Moses. It was he who taught the gospel of God to the prophets, from Adam to John the Baptist. He, Jesus, was the messenger of the covenant, the Prince of Peace, the King of glory, the great I am, enthroned in power, might, majesty, and dominion. He was greater than us all, even before he was born. From the beginning, he was that spiritual rock that led the children of God to salvation, and yet he was as meek and lowly as a lamb. Indeed, from the beginning, Jesus prepared himself to die, the sacrificial lamb that we might live. And all men, from Adam to Christ, exercised faith and received the benefits of an atonement that would happen just as you and I exercise faith in that same atonement that did. And who can say why? But after creating worlds without number, Jehovah would choose to come to this world to work out the infinite and eternal atonement for all worlds. Think about it. Let this weigh upon your mind. The God of heaven, the Almighty, was coming here to take a mortal body. The God of glory stripped himself and came to earth as a tiny, helpless babe to work out his own salvation and ours. The Savior and Redeemer of worlds without number was born that night in Bethlehem. The heavens understood who he was and what he was and what he would do, and they could not be restrained from singing. Oh, my dear friends, the more we know him, the more we too feel constrained to sing in praise to him. Good night. God bless, and Merry Christmas.